Still not convinced that we're in a bear market, whether you're talking about Bitcoin specifically or you're talking about the entire crypto asset class. But I'm not afraid to share opinions that are different than my own. And I certainly acknowledge I could be wrong, but I happen to have strong conviction. And when I do, I'm going to tell you. If I'm less certain about something, I'll say that too. But I'm just a dude on the internet. I believe that all of you are intelligent to come to your own reasonable conclusions as to what reality actually is. I'm just going to do my best to share with you on this channel, and I'll continue to do this as time passes, the best bull cases that I see and the best bear cases that I see. And this is how humans come to form conclusions, right? We'll look at the best arguments from both sides, and then it's just gonna strike us a certain way, and we're gonna come to believe that one is more likely. And we can have varying levels of conviction on whatever we think is more probable. And so that's all I'm doing right here. And I just got to tell you, the arguments that I've seen that we are in a bear market, I simply do not find as compelling as the arguments from analysts indicating we are in a bull market. And one of my biggest problems with the analysts that are insisting that we're either in or entering a bear market for Bitcoin or crypto, the entire asset class, one of the biggest pet peeves I have about that is almost all of them are arguing about the charts exclusively while completely disregarding the macro environment. And even when they're looking at chart stuff, they're not comparing the macro environment now to what happened in various other instances when certain signals on the charts were hitting. So I look at that and I just like, well, I'm looking at the argument from you, I'm looking at the argument from this other guy, and the other guy's talking about, he's using all the pieces of the puzzle, and it just seems more compelling to me. So we'll see what's right. I'm just going to share with you some things. And look, I will say this too, most of the analysts that I follow insist that we are still in the bull market. It's only a handful of the analysts that I follow that have flipped or even think it's possible that we should even have a talk about it. They're going against the grain. Most analysts that exist, actually, they're bearish right now. But what I found is that the typical fly-by-night analyst isn't worth anything anyway. So the fact that the analysts I follow on the whole are still going against what is the popular perspective, I actually find reassuring, because the typical looming retail speculators are typically wrong. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this video, it is 8:10 p.m. Central Time. So it's Monday, November 17th, 2025. By the way, today is the first day, 8 years ago, is the first day to the day that I ever bought XRP. 8 years ago today. And the first time I bought it, I think it was either 20 or 21 cents. And then I spent years accumulating, and my average buying price for XRP today is about 25 cents. Getting into crypto, though, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made, and despite all the crap we didn't know we'd have to put up with, but did have to put up with because of the SEC and missing last market cycle because of that, I'm not going to sit there and regret that. We couldn't have seen that the government was going to try and squash XRP specifically, but here we are on the other side of things, and it's fantastic. So, I mean, yeah, I would have hoped 8 years ago that XRP would be worth more. I also would have hoped that the government wouldn't have tried to destroy it and suppressed it artificially for years on end. So there's that. But luckily, I've had broad exposure to the crypto asset class, so things are good. And XRP's playing catch up. Just because we're sitting here at $2.13 as I record this, doesn't mean it can't or won't be way higher in price in the future. Obviously, that's what I'm betting on, or I wouldn't be holding it still. I will hold however long it takes for it to be like a ridiculously outsized portion of my net worth, and then I'll sell. So yeah, XRP at $2.13, Bitcoin at 91,478 bucks. I think everything's ultimately going higher. Like, I have never cashed out crypto to United States dollars, and I've never sold a single XRP in my entire life, and my net worth is way, way, way higher because I do that. That's it. After I buy stuff, I do nothing. It's a very unsophisticated investment method, and I outperform traders because almost all traders lose money. So I'm going to keep doing that. Crypto Fear and Greed Index at 11 out of 100. That's extreme fear. We were at 14 out of 100 yesterday. That's also extreme fear. The day before that, we were at 10 out of 100. And the day before that, we were also at 10 out of 100. Folks, I'm just telling you, like, we weren't in like sustained, extreme greed for long periods of times like you see at the peak of every other previous market cycle. I just do not, this is not what tops look like, folks. This is not what sentiment is at the top of markets. I'm just telling you, folks. And Update on this. This is from CoinMarketCap, crypto market cycle top indicators. They're sharing 30 indicators which haven't been triggered. None of them. 0 out of 30 have been triggered. And do they just no longer work? They worked every other market cycle. None of these triggers matter now? Like 0 of them? So we're in a bear market, but none of these work anymore, I guess? I don't know. Here's a post from the blockchain backer. And as you guys know, I'm a big fan of the blockchain backer. He's an awesome dude. He's had some excellent calls where he's been in the minority and been proven to be correct. And it's obviously, he makes no secret about it. He believes that either we're in a bear market now or we're entering a bear market now. I don't know what he would say the correct phrasing is for that. I've heard him articulate it, but I'm just trying to pull from memory here. Either way, he's more bearish than bullish. I don't think he'd dispute that, obviously. And he shared in great detail a lot of rationale why. He also shared a post today, which I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to share some of my thoughts on this. And of course, I do want to be clear. When I disagree with somebody, that does not mean that I am attacking that person. And so I just want to be very explicit here. I happen to have a different perspective than the blockchain backer, but nothing but love and respect for the guy. I'm not compelled to believe the same thing. That he does, and that's fine. And he could be proven to be correct. And if his leaning is correct, and we're actually entering a bear market, what I'm going to do is be like, "Wow, I missed it. He nailed it." I'm going to come on the channel and give him props. That is absolutely what I'll do. I don't have an ego, so it won't be terribly difficult for me to do that. I just want to believe whatever's true. But I'm a human. I'll get stuff wrong over the years. If you follow me long enough, I'm going to be wrong about certain things, and hopefully right about most things. But on this particular thing, I just don't feel the same. So this is the Bitcoin price chart. And again, he did post this morning, 7:56 a.m. Central Time. And he wrote, just like in the 2014, 2018, and in 2022 bear markets, the monthly MACD crosses and Bitcoin breaks below the 50-week moving average at the same time. Okay, so obviously a conclusion you could draw from that is history kind of repeating. That looks kind of bearish, not very good. And what he cited there is unquestionably factually correct. I'm not disputing that. And so here's what I want to say about it, though. These signals happened after massive blow-off tops, okay? Like in 2014, that was after an $1,100 blow-off top. That was a massive top back then in 2014. And then in 2018, that was a close to $20,000 blow-off top for Bitcoin. In 2022, which he's referencing here, that was after the cycle peak of close to $69,000 as a blow-off top. And in all of those cases, Bitcoin had already peaked. And I understand that he may be arguing here like, sure, it has peaked. But it not only had it peaked, in those instances, it had failed parabolic structure. We didn't have that. We definitely didn't have that this time. There was no final parabola. It had lost major trend lines. It had broken market structure for those instances. It had shown clear distribution topping patterns and more. This cycle, though, is not that. We had no true blow-off top. Just like basically a rounded high into $126,000 roughly. That's about where the peak for Bitcoin was last month, mind you. And it's just a choppy range. Entirely different structure. And you don't have to be a chart guy to understand that. And I'm not. Just to be clear, I'll just reiterate. What I do to come to conclusion, this is what any intelligent human will do, because we can't be experts in most things in life. You get the best argument from one side and the best argument from the other, and then you come to your own reasonable conclusion about who's probably correct. And so I've seen the arguments from other analysts I follow, which I have shared on my channel, and I happen to find those arguments more compelling. Some of you will find the blockchain backers' arguments more compelling, and that's fine. We'll see what ends up being the most accurate, but I am where I am. There are things that could happen to flip me into bearish, and if that happens, I'll tell you, we're just not there. And also, look, I think it's crucial to consider the macro environment with 2014, 2018, and 2022, since that's what he's referencing here, and compare that to the environment today, the macro environment today, which he's not doing in this post, obviously. He only looks at the charts, but not the other pieces of the puzzle. He's not looking at the macro pieces of the puzzle, just the charts. But all three prior bear market signals came during What? Tightening liquidity, rising rates, and quantitative tightening or stagnant M2. Those were totally different environments, and that's worth knowing. That's absolutely worth knowing. Today, though, liquidity is about to surge. I mean, I'd like to talk to anybody that disputes that. I would be curious to see that. What else? Well, TGA release is coming, which I've made a whole video about that, which is going to be nearly $1 trillion that will flow into the economy, likely over the next 3 to 6 months. You've got, and by the way, that's damn near a record. That's in the neighborhood of the amount of money that flowed in over roughly the same time period during the pandemic. And you know what happened then. Also, quantitative tightening is ending. These are things that materially matter. Changes how money flows through the world. You got global M2 expanding. Rates cut. We got 2 rate cuts this year. And not that any of these single metrics necessarily are like rate cuts. I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but put it all together. Rate cuts happen. We may get more. And you've got ETFs in full effect. So I'm not saying that any one of these things is the silver bullet, but I'm saying that's a lot of stuff. And given that we know that liquidity absolutely is what rules markets, and knowing directionally where that's going with a high level of certainty and where it is now, I can't pretend I'm bearish. Like I just am not. Which isn't to say we can't go lower in the short term, but I just don't find these arguments compelling in a vacuum. Like you got to consider the macro stuff. So it doesn't mean we can't move sideways for some amount of time. And even Raoul Pal, who is the guy that made me first aware of the importance of global liquidity and how risk on assets follow, even he has said, you might peak in like Q2 of 2026. He's been saying that for a long time, which means we could move sideways for some time before you see some major action. And then if people want to call that a bear market, I guess okay. But then you can go to Raoul Pal, and then we're getting into a semantics game. What's technically a bear market? If we peak in 2026, halfway through the year, were we in a bear market? And so you're going to have some people arguing that we were. Well then, okay. but then still materially different than what happened in previous cycles. But so anyway, the blockchain backer here, so he's comparing, if you look at those 3 years he cited, 2014, 2018, and 2022, he's comparing those 3 basically liquidity starvation events to a liquidity flood event, which is where we are now. These are very different environments. The only times that breaking below the 50-week moving average reliably signaled that bear markets were here, it was after blow-off tops, which has not occurred here. So that's another reason. So outside of it occurring after blow-off tops, at any time the 50-week moving average was broken did not signal we're in a bear market. And it has happened other times. And in fact, the 50-week moving average routinely is tested during mid-cycle retracements, which is arguably what we're seeing right now. And really, evidence, it does point to us being in a mid-cycle retracement right now. There are absolutely analysts that I follow making that argument. I've shared their perspectives on my channel. And so I do find those arguments compelling. And in fact, in both 2013 and 2017 mid-cycle pullbacks, you saw temporary breakdowns under major moving averages. You saw bearish MACD crosses. You saw fear spike. Sentiment collapsed. The whole cycle is over narrative basically. But what happened after that? After all that, Bitcoin went parabolic. Do you see how that's different? I mean, well, you can see the same parts in everything that I said. Like the same parts here, obviously. Again, specifically if you're looking at the 50-week moving average, I'm just saying it can fall below that level and not be the end of the world. And there's absolutely historic precedent for that. Unquestionably, there is. That does happen during mid-cycle pullbacks, actually. So, and I know this because I follow a lot of different chart analysts. That's the reason I know this. But the price structure, the macro backdrop, the lack of blow-off top in this cycle all align with that mid-cycle interpretation. And I do find that compelling. It doesn't align with the end of cycle bear market. And look, I'm not a chart guy, but I've seen those arguments from a number of chart analysts that I follow, which I've been sharing on my channel, and I personally find that data to be the most convincing So if anything flips, I will change my mind as I see it necessary. And I absolutely could be wrong, but I think it's a fun topic of conversation here. So I'm always going to cover the stuff on my channel. And I think that diversity of thought is very healthy. It's how we humans come to believe, ideally, the most reasonable thing. You know, we're doing our best. If you want to believe whatever is true, this is the way to go about it. That's the argument I'm making here. And so I'm just operating in good faith trying to do that. And that is the right approach in life just in general. So if he's right, he'll get all the credit in the world. And maybe he is. I'm just not seeing it yet. And without factoring in certain things, including the macro environment, I'm going to have trouble finding any analyst particularly compelling if you're not using all the pieces that are part of the jigsaw puzzle. That's all I'm saying. And then there's this from the Kobasi letter. And they become quite popular. 1.1 million followers. And they wrote, current situation. The U.S. is preparing $2,000 stimulus checks. Japan is preparing $110 billion stimulus package. China has approved a $1.4 trillion stimulus package. The Fed is officially ending quantitative tightening on December 1st. The U.S. is issuing about $1.9 trillion in treasuries per year. Canada is restarting its quantitative easing program. Global M2 money supply is at a record $137 trillion. Global rate cuts are at 320 plus over the last 24 months. And then it writes, in what world is another wave of inflation not on its way? Okay, now he's making the point to bring up that inflation is on the way, and perhaps that is correct. That's not the reason I'm highlighting this, though. It's because the reason I'm highlighting that is because I read that and I was like, all of these things point to number go up for risk on assets like stocks and crypto. It's just a tsunami of cash flowing into the system, and a certain percentage will make it to the stock market, will make it to crypto, will make it to XRP specifically. These are all real things really happening. This is not the environment that we found ourselves in when we're going into when we've gone into bear markets. The cyclical 4-year situation you all are very aware of. This is not what you see when we're entering those situations, which is why I have a hard time believing that the party's over. It is what it is, folks. But some people do think that everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. Here's Nebraskan Gooner, 401,000 followers on X. This guy suffers from XRP derangement syndrome. I've been aware of this guy for quite some time here. But like I said, I'm always happy to share perspectives that are different than my own. And it's been, in recent times, hard to find projections from analysts that think things are going to get way, way, way worse. But we're seeing some of that now. They've been getting a little bit more cocky now that Bitcoin and the entire crypto asset class is getting down. And so here, XRP lost the previous breakout level, looks headed back to $1.50 area. Look, I'll just say this. If Bitcoin goes down enough, sure, you could see XRP go down to ridiculous levels like that. You could see Ethereum go down to who knows what. Yeah, crypto's volatile. Okay, I'm well aware. I am well aware of this fact. So it could happen. I'm just saying without Bitcoin going dramatically lower, I'd be surprised if you see a drop like that in XRP. I don't buy that. If the whole market's going to go, sure. In which case, it's not a problem with XRP anyway, so I just don't give a damn, and it's not going to scare me. It just isn't. I've never sold a single XRP in my entire freaking life, and that won't cause me to sell. I'm not going to get more likely to sell if the price goes down. I'll be less likely to sell if the price goes down. That's how this works. Here's a post from chart analyst Zoom. He's maybe flipping a little bit bear here. This is the first I've seen of him. Well, there have been a couple posts recently, but it's more recent development where chart analyst Zoom is a bit concerned here. And so this is an XRP chart going back to 2017. And he said, I'm not one to solely rely on single indicators, but you can get a clearer picture when you combine external data alongside indicators. With the Russell not having the strength needed, indicators flashing death crosses, cycle indicators showing us end, and the broader macro environment, everything leads me to believe we might be going into a bear market / have entered one already. Exactly why I sold 50% of my portfolio a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so I might feel so inclined as to ask him exactly what his perspective is here, because he's talking about the macro concerning him specifically, and I don't know what cycle top indicators, if there are particular metrics, or if he's just seen individual instances in the charts, like the 50-week moving average for Bitcoin like we just talked about, and again, this is an XRP chart. So I'm not sure, but I just wanted to highlight this because, again, almost none of the analysts that I follow have flipped bearish, so when I notice one is concerned, it jumps out at me. And if I start seeing, like, even close to half of the analysts that I follow all saying the same thing, I'll be like, okay, I guess the party's probably over, actually, because these people have pretty damn good track records. And if more than half will, I'll be like, guys, I will come on the channel begrudgingly, like, I hate to say it. But I doubt that this many talented analysts with great track records are all simultaneously wrong about this. But I'm not seeing that from them now. So take it for what it's worth. There's this post from Tara. I actually shared this the other day. No need for me to read this, but I was just noting that she was warning yesterday, and I highlighted it, that XRP could drop potentially as low as $1.88. This is somebody who's pro XRP. Here's a post from Chart Nerd. This is from this afternoon. Said accumulation remains intact as for XRP. Close below $2.20 over the next few days. Then a $2 retest is likely. We move. Waiting patiently. So there is an acknowledgement that we could get closer to that $2 level from somebody, Chart Nerd, who is pro XRP. No derangement syndrome there. And so I have seen this from a number of analysts. You could be testing some lower levels that are going to make some people squeamish. Won't make me feel negative emotions because I'm basically a robot. Beep, boop, beep. But I just want to put it out there so you guys are aware if it happens. You can collectively lose your minds if you so choose. I'm not gonna. And then there's another one from him here. This is from this morning. XRP is in a similar 20-month EMA retest setup to 2017. If history repeats, we're about to witness a price surge. Wouldn't mind seeing that, and I'd be surprised, again, if XRP really peaked, I'd be like, what the hell is actually broken? It just, after all these years, it barely peaked above its all-time high, and it's like, that's enough for now. Oh, okay. Here's a post from chart analyst Ali Martinez. $2.15 is the line in the sand for XRP. Hold it and move to $2.40 to $2.70 becomes likely. Okay. Well, at the time I'm recording this, we're a hair below that. So I guess it's the end of the world and the sky is falling, right? That's pretty much it. Then there was this from Crypto Insight UK. He said, I went on to, actually, let me just read this. This is from his newsletter. I wanted to share a couple thoughts from him. He's more optimistic here, let's say. And the vast majority of analysts that I follow, again, not just with Bitcoin, but specifically with XRP, are absolutely still expecting the best to be ahead of us this cycle. But here you have XRP versus Bitcoin building momentum. XRP versus Bitcoin is still holding a range whilst continuing to battle 6-year resistance. We look like we are about to cross bullish on the weekly RSI again, which, if confirmed, since our lows has led to a minimum of 49% and a maximum of 336% upside move against Bitcoin. This would take us above our current trading range and the resistance. I've suggested some areas of interest to pay attention to if we get this sort of move. And so that's a friendly reminder, like, should that occur, things happen quickly, folks. Either you have exposure when the stuff happens, the good stuff happens, or you don't, which is why I just hold. I do literally nothing. I'm not a finance guru. I'm not some sort of wizard. I'm just a regular dude. I buy stuff, and then I don't assume that I'm smarter than the market or any of the wizard finance guys. I just don't do anything, and then I win. Like, that's it. It's how you win in the stock market. It's how you win in crypto. It just works. You just have broad exposure and you wait. That's what I do. And so anyway, I'm just pointing out it can happen quickly when it does, and I'm going to be here when it does. And I think it's going to be this market cycle, and if it's not, then I'll still be here when it happens several years from now. Either way, I'm going to win. I refuse to lose. Then there was this from him, XRP dominance. He says, a very similar story here. However, I feel we have successfully completed a 7-year Wyckoff accumulation, and although many believe what I'm displaying above is impossible, I'm just showing you what I see in the charts. And so you can see he's talking about XRP dominance going from where it is now over 4% to potentially highs like 31%. Yeah, I'm skeptical of it getting that high. It was up in that range in 2017, but now there are like tens of thousands more coins tracked by, for instance, CoinMarketCap. There's too much competition out there for XRP to get that large of a percentage, but it doesn't matter in terms of how many dollars can flow in. It's not like there's some sort of numerical peak for that. That's programmed in. I'm just saying when it comes to the percentage of the market that XRP can dominate, yeah, I'm highly skeptical it's ever going to reach that high again, but it doesn't need to. And it's only because, look, in 2017, at the end of the year, there were like 1,600 coins in existence. So when you have now tens of thousands of coins in existence, yeah, you're going to have a lower percentage of dominance for XRP. The fact that it's over 4% right now, all things considered, pretty damn good. And there's no reason that can't like triple or quadruple, even if briefly. Especially during a surge. This can go way, way higher. I personally think the best is yet ahead. So you guys can tell me what you think. I'm just doing my best to come to a reasonable conclusion about what is probable, like the rest of you are. You can tell me if you think I'm right. You can tell me if you think I'm wrong. I don't get offended by people telling me I'm wrong. I don't get offended by people having different opinions than me. As long as you're being tactful about it and it's not an attack and you're just disagreeing with me, I'm never going to get mad at anybody for disagreeing with me. Now, there's a nice way to do it and there's a douchebag way to do it. And if you're doing the douchebag way, I'm just going to block you if we're in social media. But if you're nicely telling me why you think I'm wrong, I'm more likely to engage with you. And I welcome that. I think that's fun. Plus, if I'm wrong, I want to know I'm wrong so that I can stop being wrong. I think that would be nice. So yeah, you guys just tell me what you think. I'm just trying to make sense of it like the rest of you, but I am where I am. I think the best is yet ahead, including for this cycle. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time.